All right, everyone, welcome back to session 12 for Monday, September 28th, I believe. Yep, that's right. This is for section 3003, and as always, I'm your host, Mr. Fowler. I'm going to go ahead and share our homepage screen so that we can look at what's on our agenda today. As per usual, I have a brief preview and review. I'm going to aim to make that a little bit shorter than 15 minutes today. And then we'll get down to our Zoom lecture. And today we're going to talk about Princess Nerina and the prospect of peace as it relates to our primary text for the rest of the semester of The Princess Bride. If you haven't got a copy, once again, try to secure a copy as soon as you can. And then I want to briefly chat about this week's discussion questions. So we'll start with the review. Last time we looked at the first two chapters of The Princess Bride, and we talked about a couple of connected ideas. We began by talking about the concept of the book and its introduction, as it was based upon a story structure that the author, William Goldman, introduced in the first or introductory chapter. Now, this precedes, of course, the actual beginning of the novel in chapter 1. So we're given two very distinctive impressions of William Goldman. One is of William Goldman in 1973, when he is a prolific and popular screenwriter working in Hollywood. And it's his son's 10th birthday. And on the occasion of this 10th birthday, he is reminded of an instance from his youth when he was just Billy Goldman way back in the good old 1940s. And he discovers that there's a need, that he has some kind of internal drive to reconnect to his son. And he remembers a moment where he and his father had connected over a book, The Princess Bride, by a writer named S. Morgenstern. Now, according to the introduction, S. Morgenstern heralds from a European country called Florin, and he wrote this book. It was a classic of that era. And his father read the book to him and translated the text as he read. As such, the version that comes down to William Goldman is an edited or good parts version. And he takes it upon himself to recreate a version of the story that his father had told him when he was a young boy. In doing so, we, his extended readership, get to read the copy, the good parts version that he created based on S. Morgenstern's original text. Now, Mr. Fowler helped you out a little bit by explaining that, in point of fact, there is no unabridged version because S. Morgenstern doesn't exist. He's not a real person. Neither does Jason, William Goldman's son. William Goldman actually had two daughters, and they were the impetus for this story, The Princess Bride. So why he recreates these ideas in the introduction or reframes them, that's somewhat up for debate. But after we got through the introduction, we took a look at the first two chapters, which introduces us to the two principal characters, Wesley and Buttercup. And of course, if you've seen the film adaptation, which is very famous, you're already probably familiar with them. But we get some more specific and intimate details about how they feel about one another and how they perceive the world. Then in chapter 2, we get a real quick excised version of that chapter. And Goldman begins with a long introductory author's note in parentheses. And as we discussed last time, this is kind of epidemic with him as an author. He decides that what he wants to discuss really results in a much more abbreviated form, but he still feels the need to explain to the reader what it was that he cut out in order to deliver us this good parts version. So when we wrap up chapter 2, we just get a little bit of a preview of the villain of the piece, Prince Humperdinck. This kind of, amazing hunter, shaped like a barrel, walks like a crab, but he's got this ridiculous name, even though he's a personage of menace and not to be taken lightly. Okay, so that takes us to chapter 3, which is where we pick up today. All right, so let's see. I think that's
so far ahead.
Some of you are far ahead. I knew that would happen. Are you enjoying?
Again, I started this book so late.
That's okay. Are you enjoying the book so far?
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's not too bad. I think even if you've already read the book, you're going to get a sense, or seen the film rather, I think you're going to get a good sense of what else the book has to offer. There are some complicated issues regarding this text that we're going to have to address at some point, but we're not there just yet. So this is a slightly longer chapter. I think the first 2 chapters together were about 20 pages. And this chapter, while not necessarily that much longer, is about 20 pages itself. And then we have another short, ridiculously short chapter with chapter 4 as well. So if you wanted to go ahead and read chapter 4 while you were on a roll, don't feel bad about doing it. Okay.
So I think I'll catch up these short chapters.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good way to catch up and make sure that your reading is on point. Okay. So today's topic again is Princess Nerina and the prospect of peace. So if you don't know who Princess Nerina is yet, get to chapter 3 as soon as you can, because this is high farcical humor that we have. And
I don't know if I want to mute the audio for the sake of spoilers or just
Well, theoretically, we're here.
I'll have to participate eventually. So just continue.
Okay. We're here. We might as well talk about it. There's no better time than the present. I'm going to pause for one moment, though, while we are here, and I'm going to move over to the discussions tab for just a second. If I'm speaking too quickly today, I apologize. I admit, even though I should be in complete control of the situation, I admit that the technical difficulties for this morning have kind of thrown me off a little bit. So I'm allowing that to sort of drive my impulses rather than the class itself. Whoa, week 6. I need to edit that. But again, for this week, William Goldman states that, he is adapting The Princess Bride from a novel written by the great Florinese writer S. Morgenstern. Now, we know that that's not true. Still, I'm going to ask you a couple of backup questions. Do you believe there really is such a person? But here, of course, you don't have to surprise me by knowing that he's not real. But why or why not do you believe that? Now, do you think Goldman might want to confuse readers about that for some reason? In other words, he goes to a lengthy bit of discussion to get us to believe that this whole process is real. So why? What is at stake for him as a writer in creating this story, behind the story? Does he want to confuse us for some reason? And lastly, is the kind of confusion he's hoping to generate necessary for the story he's trying to tell? That may require you to do some thinking on your feet, so to speak, because again, we already know.
Okay, there we go.
We already know that it's not a real person. We already know that the story is fake. So, or the S. Morgenstern is fake. So my real question, I guess, to you all for this week is, why does he go about completing this ruse? What is so compelling in his estimation that he needs to complete to make this S. Morgenstern connection for you as a group of readers? I don't know, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Okay, now before I jump into the lecture, I'm going to do that screen mute again, because as I've said, it seems to work a little bit better if the visual elements, when it's not necessary, is something that we don't have to deal with. So I'm just going to mute my camera. You can still hear me. You can still write into the chat, but we'll get started now. I'm just going to type that in. Okay, there, I have that ready. Now I've got the book in front of me, and again, I'm not going to read from the book, but I have it here for reference in case I need to refer back to the text. Before we get into a lengthy discussion.
Your mic is crackling.
Okay. I'll try to avoid that. And I'll use the chat too. Any last minute questions about material from last week? And I'll post that out there on the chat. Any last minute questions about last week's material?
None on this end.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and forge ahead. I'm going to go ahead and forge ahead. Try it like this. I'm going to begin the discussion for Chapter 3. Now, Chapter 3 is subtitled The Courtship. And it makes you assume, as a reader, that we're going to hear a little bit about the courtship between Buttercup and Prince Humperdinck. And in point of fact, we do. But Chapter 3 is very important because in no way, shape, or form is any of this material included in the film adaptation. I'll say that again. Chapter 3 is not included in the film. So this is entirely new material. We begin with 4 people gathered in the council room of the Florin Castle. And there's great hope that there may be a prospective young princess from the country of Gilder who may be a match for Prince Humperdinck. So Prince Humperdinck gathers, of course, Count Rugen, his main man-at-arms, and then he gathers his father, who is a really interesting character, to say the least. I don't know if they're suggesting that he's had some debilitating health issues or if he's just so old that he's no longer able to communicate effectively, but there's some sort of mental or physical issue here, or a combination of both. And it's played up for humor. The person is Queen Bella, which is his evil stepmother. Now, this is very interesting because we've seen the tropes of evil stepmothers.
Your
before.
mic is having problems again.
Okay. So I'll type this in to the chat. Okay. So there's the question. We meet Queen Bella in this chapter. How is she similar to or different from evil stepmothers that we've met in other similar texts? What are your thoughts about that? Kaylee, can you hear me? Maybe not. Connor, how about you? Can you hear me? Oh.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I was just trying to throw this out to a couple of people. I know I'm having some trouble with the mic today. How did you get a chance to read chapter 3?
Oh,
No.
evil step.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you did, what impressions did Queen Bella, the evil stepmother of Prince Humperdinck, who's our villain, what kinds of impression did she make on you, if any?
Okay, I can't really answer the top half, but I say how similar or and different from other evil stepmothers you've read in prior texts. Okay, so when you say evil stepmother, the only thing that comes to mind is Cinderella, and the evil stepmother was more sort of manipulative in some way. She kind of gradually distanced Cinderella to not attend the ball and assign all these tasks to someone, and putting that like assigning tasks into play. I'm guessing she tests Bella to see if she's worthy or something like that. I mean, Buttercup. My bad.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I got. Shots in the dark.
Yeah, okay. So there's a little bit of testing here, but one of the main things that she does is she reinterprets the king's mumblings. And I find that to be really interesting. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was just kind of chuckling because that kind of made me fun and made me laugh that he had become so mumblesome that she was the only one that can interpret, and it's constantly like and then she's like, "Oh, that's great, dear. Yes, dear." And what did he say? And then she'll constantly interpret.
Yeah, yeah. So, how could this be advantageous to someone in her position? That's a good point to bring up.
Well, she's interpreting for the king who's in complete power, so no one knows what the king says unless she tells them. So it's kind of to her discretion to divulge what he's saying.
So in a sense, she's kind of wielding the cards here.
Absolutely. That's a good point that you both make. She is in power in this situation, and as a result of the king's inability to communicate clearly and precisely, she interprets what's said. Now, the other interesting thing to note is that usually an evil stepmother denotes that the child for whom she is the stepmother suffers in some way, shape, or form. But that's not true of Prince Humperdinck. Prince Humperdinck is a very capable fellow, and it's actually only the only thing that she does that's evil, or by the way, he calls her ES for short instead of Queen Bella, he calls her ES for evil stepmother. The only thing he really suffers from is that she becomes an intermediary between himself and his father. So it seems like an evil stepmother, perhaps in some ways, shape, or form, has begotten an evil stepson in Prince Humperdinck. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I think it's interesting. He has an evil stepmother, even though he himself is the main villain.
Even though, okay, your mic is cutting in and out again.
Oh, okay. Let me type that in. Okay. Again, is it curious that Prince Humperdinck considers Bella an evil stepmother despite being the villain of the story himself?
Darn it, I forgot my words already.
Oh, shoot.
Okay. The curious to any that Prince Humperdinck considered.
Did it say earlier in the book that the queen had raised Humperdinck from his youth, like she was around for most of his youth? I can't quite remember.
There we go. That's what I want to say.
It doesn't really. Let's see. Yeah, he was but a child when his father married her, and since the only stepmothers he knew were evil ones from stories, he always called her ES for short.
So she was around for most of his childhood, kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
So he refers to her as being evil, when he himself is kind of considered evil in the book. Another shot in the dark here. I guess he doesn't want to be evil. He's aware, but doesn't know how to exactly escape.
Yeah, this is something that's a little bit unique about Prince Humperdinck. He does not perceive himself as an evil storybook villain. He, as far as he's concerned, he is a good person. Like he's the hero of his own story. And going back to a comment that
a tragic villain.
Yeah, exactly. In some ways, he's a bit of a tragic villain. And going back to something Kevin said, she raises him when he's a child, but based on the evidence I just read in from the text, it seems like he assumes she's evil because she's a stepmother, because those are the only stepmothers he was aware of at the time. So he perhaps prejudges her before he's able to actually get to know her as a person.
I haven't really witnessed her being too evil quite yet. I mean, I think it was her that was checking out Wesley that got Buttercup real angry. Was that the queen?
Good point. Yeah. Good question. That was actually Count Rugen's wife, Countess Rugen.
That was a couple of ways. Okay, Countess, never mind. But I was just going to say that I didn't notice her being that evil, and I really got the vibe from the way she was taking care of the king that she was almost being like matronly and like pleasant. I didn't really notice too much evil yet.
Right. She actually pays him a compliment. When the king mumbles a response, he asks for Queen Bella's interpretation, and she says that there is not a princess in Gilder, or wait. She says rather something about how attractive he is, or something like that. What did he say? The prince wondered. This is on page 74. And Queen Bella interprets for the king, saying, he said a man of your importance couldn't marry just any princess. And that she was going to be very good, a very good potential companion for the king. And they talk about her appearance. They say that she is stately, that she is a fit woman. She has kind of marble-ish colored skin, which is kind of an odd way. Like, I don't know how to interpret that. Marble? No, I've never seen anybody that looked like marble. I guess maybe.
So I'm gonna search that up.
Yeah. Maybe she's got really smooth skin, like Marvel smooth. That one escapes me a little bit. And then all Prince Humperdinck asks is whether or not she's a huntress. Do you think she would be good at hunting? And there's nothing that no information about that. I wonder if she hunts, Humperdinck asked. I don't care so much about her personality. Just so they're good with a knife. So there you go.
All right, so I searched up marble skin, and of course I'm getting things about it's saying what causes marbling of the skin. Modding is caused by the heart no longer be able to pump blood effectively. Because of this, blood pressure drops, causing extreme extremities to feel cold to the touch. The skin starts to become discolored. So I'm guessing something about being cold. I'm guessing that reflects to her personality.
That would make sense, especially in keeping with what happens as the chapter unfolds. Absolutely. So maybe she's kind of a cold person, or maybe that's, as you said, that the quality of her skin is supposed to be a reflection of her character. I don't know. That seems sort of odd, but it's not so far out there, because as we know, royalty was many times limited to a select potential pool of mates. And that resulted in something called blue blood, which when so many people of similar families got together over time, they would actually develop a blood disorder, kind of similar to what you've described there, Devin, with the marbling. And they actually took a slightly blue tinge because of the quality of the blood as it coursed through their veins. So perhaps that's a reference, if it's not just like the idea that she has very smooth skin.
We'll take it into account.
Yeah.
But this.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that says about Prince Humperdinck's character either. I was just typing this in, right? He doesn't really care if they have personalities, but if they're good with a knife, that's important to him. Okay.
Sort of warrior?
Yeah, maybe that's what he's looking for. I'm not sure, but that seems to be of importance to him, more so than say something like personality. So of course they have a really good setup here for a high comedy in the second half of the third chapter. They settle on meeting with Princess Norina of Gilder. So this is very important, because a lot of the tropes in this book not only play with fairy tale conventions, but they play with conventions that were true of the medieval era. So my question here is, does Norina really represent a potential prospect for peace between Gilder and Florin? So how do you read this? Does Norina represent potential prospect for peace between Gilder and Norina and Florin? You can answer in the comments, or you can answer in the chat.
Now, I'll say this. There's a character in a game called One Step from Eden. The final boss is a sort of angelic character that has these sort of divine swords and is immortal. And just going off of that and how crazy this book is already, I'm guessing like she has this sort of image of like to uphold, but again, like the evil stepmother, probably either is gonna do something about that, or she herself, the Princess Marina, is also has some devious plans of her own.
Perhaps. I mean, that's a good point. Norina, like I said, is a bit of a mysterious character, especially throughout the first half of the book, first half of the chapter, because she only makes the single appearance in chapter 3. But what's unique is that this kind of coupling was not out of the ordinary in the medieval period. Most royal marriages, especially, were not true love matches, but rather they were matches made along the lines.
You are worthy.
Yeah, of associations that would either help enhance the fiscal viability of one kingdom over another, or they would perhaps aid in joining two kingdoms together to avoid the prospect of war. I always think about
that one scene in Mulan too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said that one scene in Mulan too, where Mulan was trying when she thought Shang had died, and she's going to continue the mission by not having the three sisters marry, but herself marry, and thereby form the bond between the two kingdoms, and not have the Huns be attacking so much.
Okay, that's a good reference.
That was a rough description of what happened, but heck, sorry.
Well, no, that's okay, because that idea actually sparked a memory for me with regard to, I think it's Sleeping Beauty. So if you go back and visit the Disney version of Sleeping Beauty, I can't confirm any other version of this than the Disney version. I think it's Prince Charming. He's there, and what's very funny is that he goes to Sleeping Beauty Aurora's like christening or something like that, and he's about 5 years old, or 5 or 6 years old, and she's only about a year old, and he's got this kind of yucky look on his face because he, at that point in his life, the prospect of marrying a baby later on has no interest for him whatsoever. Of course, it's a little bit different when he's like, I don't know, 25 and she's 20.
Older.
Yeah, but in that first scene, I always got a lot of humor out of the fact that he's like, I'm gonna have to marry this baby someday. Anyway, that's what this kind of.
He's just a child. He doesn't understand love.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so there's a authorial break in the middle of the text. Not necessarily a parenthetical break at this point, but there's just an ellipsis of 3 stars in the middle of page 75. And then William Goldman's voice breaks in again to the text. And he says, of all the cuts in this revision, I feel most justified in making this cut. Just as the chapters in whaling in the text of Moby Dick can be omitted by all but the most punishment-loving readers, so the packing scenes that Morgenstern details here are really best left alone. That's what happens for the next 56 and a half pages of The Princess Bride, a description of packing. I include unpacking scenes in the same category. So what happens is just this. Queen Bella packs most of her wardrobe, which consists of 11 pages, and travels to Gilder, which takes up an additional 2 pages. And in Gilder, she unpacks, which takes 5 pages, and then tenders the invitation to Princess Norina, which takes a page. Princess Norina accepts this, and then Princess Norina packs, her clothes, and her hats, which takes place over 23 pages. Now, this is funny because in the arthurial note, you could not, at least I did not suspect what was going to happen in the second half of chapter 3, but that note about the hats taking 23 pages is setting us up for some grand humor. And then together, the princess and the queen travel back to Florin for another page.
Are they shopping or something? Wait, what?
It seems like that, yeah. And then for 12 pages, she unpacks the hats and clothes that she had just seen, that we just described a few pages before. And he says it's a baffling passage. No kidding. And then he says, I'm going to pick things up at the prince and princess as they spend a day together. And so we fast forward to dinner that night, and we have this very strange evening, which is established for the night of the dinner. And it says the night was typical, more typical than less, and the winds whistled constantly with candles needing relighting. And some of the more daringly dressed ladies did shiver. But Prince Humperdinck didn't mind, and in Florin, if he didn't mind, it was best that you did not mind either. And then we have a slow motion scene where at 8:24, things get really, between 8:23 and 8:24, just 1 minute in time, everything seems to slow down and it gets really complicated. So my question here to you is, do you find the humor in the pacing, the countdown of seconds making up a single minute, effective? Or is the entire enterprise more cruel than funny? What do you think?
I will say it is kind of odd how, again, this book is kind of all over the place, and yet it then focuses down on that one moment of time, giving you that kind of deeper look on oneself and what they're probably going through at that point.
Right. I think that's a good point. Sometimes a moment in time is worth slowing down to look at. Now, the biggest overture here is humorous, but it also leads the two countries closer to war than they had been before Princess Nerina arrived. So what happens essentially is this.
Ironic.
Yes. The wind.
Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Am I
The
using
wind
that word
picks
right?
up, and of course we've been told there were so many pages originally spent describing the kinds of hats that Nerina brings.
Shopping?
And the wind blows off her hat that she's wearing to reveal that she's bald, that she has no hair on her head. And at this instance, Prince Humperdinck says, "Madam, you should feel free to flee the scene." And then he storms off. So in other words, Prince Humperdinck decides there's no way he's going to be marrying a bald woman.
Oh, the humiliation!
Doesn't the king notice her baldness too, and the queen translates?
Yes.
remember.
Let's see. What about that? Where did that happen? Yes. King Lothario, or Lotharon, which is Prince Humperdinck's father, he says that Nerina has no hair. And then Queen Bella, who is thoroughly embarrassed for Nerina, says, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. And then he says, in response, I don't think he'll like that very much. And so we get this pretty common exchange, or pretty comedic exchange, but I can't help in the aftermath of reading this but think, oh my gosh, how utterly devastating must this be? How completely embarrassing must this be for Princess Narina, because she's tried her best to please a relatively boorish person. And yeah, she does have one
Mhm.
little setback, and that's just that she doesn't have hair. But this is a specific cultural calling card that affects many women today, even to this, even in our common era, that the tendency over time has been for women to, if not wear their hair in a long or flattering manner, at least to take great pride in the way they style and coif their hair. But Narina has so many other gifts, and she seems like such a good person, in as much as she's able to set aside her emotional response to this prince to think of the good of her people, the good of her kingdom. And she says, this guy's kind of a bore, but I'm willing to marry him if the prospect of peace becomes apparent. But it's just happenstance that the wind blows her hat off, and otherwise Prince Humperdinck have ever even known until after he married her. There's a good chance he may never have known that. But like I said, it is kind of funny as a scene, but I also think there's some cruelty there. So I'm curious as to what your interpretation may be.
Yeah. I guess the cruelty would be how quickly he just says, "Okay, go on now. I don't want you anymore."
Yeah. I mean,
And then like how casual parents are about it.
absolutely.
Cool.
And of course, it's in this instance that Count Rugen steps forward and he says, if you're looking for someone who's a little bit more average, a little more common, I know just the person. And so it is here that they introduce the idea of Buttercup, a milkmaid, that
A farmer.
yeah, right, that he's very impressed by. And so the prince runs the idea of her being a milkmaid over his tongue, and he says, I don't know that I could wed one of them even under the best of conditions. People might snicker that she was the best I could do. And the count admits that this is a possibility. He says, if you prefer, we can ride back to Florin without waiting. And he says, oh, we've come this far. And he says, we might as well wait. And then his voice fades away. He says, and when he sees Buttercup, he's like, yes, this will work. I'll take her. And so that is the setup. And when he meets Buttercup, she flatly refuses his offer. And he says, well,
I love the exchange.
yeah, I'm your king. So to refuse me means your death, that you could be killed without question. Why would you rather be dead than married to me? And she says, marriage involves love, and that is not a pastime at which I, meaning Buttercup, excel. I tried once and it went badly, and I'm sworn never to love another. And then Prince Humperdinck says, oh, wait, you're confused. Love? This isn't about love. There must be a male heir to the throne of Thorin, and that's me. So once my father dies, there won't be an heir, just a king, which is me again. And when that happens, I'll marry and have children until there's a son. So you can either marry me and be rich and powerful, and give turkeys away at Christmas, or you can die in terrible pain in the very near future. And she says, I'll never love you. And he says, I wouldn't want that if I had it. And then she says, okay, well then by all means, let us marry. So if you think about the idea of a typical...
Wait, hold on. That latter, that near end kind of threw me off. Like, wait, I choose not to love you, and it's like he said he wouldn't want it. What?
Yeah, he said that's fine. I wouldn't even I wouldn't even want you to love me if you felt that way. I'm not looking for love. I'm looking for someone to produce an heir. So you could be miserable but rich and powerful, or you could be miserable and die a horrible death. And she's like, well, as long as I don't have to really be in love with you, I think this will work out. So this is a pretty unconventional courtship that that the two of them enjoy.
Huh?
Yeah.
How against their character?
Yeah, it is. It's but like I said, up to this point, she believes that Wesley is dead because his ship was intercepted on the way to the American colonies by the Dread Pirate Roberts. And the Dread Pirate Roberts, as we know from the film and the novel, takes no prisoners. So it's a pretty fair guess that Wesley has been killed. So she is despondent over this. And Prince Humperdinck's offer comes along when she's perhaps at her most vulnerable. Okay. So that pretty much sums up chapter 3. Any other thoughts or ideas that you all have or that you'd like me to cover?
I have some.
Yeah.
But I just feel like I should probably save them because, I don't want to spoil myself already. Just throwing these shots in the dark.
Okay. Well, you can always text them to me. Text me a question privately using the chat, and I will answer it if you are interested in that.
More so assumptions of what may come later. So that's what I'm saying. I'm just gonna leave them alone.
Okay, fair enough. Now I know this seems like a relatively short session today, and it is because we had some unforeseen technical
We're late.
difficulties. Yeah. Hopefully that won't crop up again. I wish I had a better answer for it, but I also have to be conscientious of the time that you need. I realize some of you may have other courses that you need to attend to today, or the other sessions that you may need to join. So if you don't have any other thoughts or ideas that you want me to address regarding chapter 3, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today. Okay. So this is Mr. Fowler, and I want to thank you all so much for your time and your attention today. I'll sign off with you now, and I bid you a good rest of your week, and I'll talk to you some more on Wednesday. Take care, everyone.